Welcome to our study group here within the Sacred Self-Healing Community, Mondays, 11 p.m. Eastern Time on Skype. This is our Sacred Self-Healing thread here where we do online meditations for free and discussions and energy talks, forecasts sometimes. Yeah, and on Mondays we come together to discuss deeper aspects of some of the things that we experience, yeah, as sort of this conscious soul self and the underlying esoteric concepts. So the study group really relies on your questions and on things that you would like to investigate deeper. Yeah, we have a lot of other opportunities to just share and to just talk about our personal things. Here, I would like to specifically go into questions and comments that relate to the bigger topics so that we have an opportunity, so that I have an opportunity in the conversation with you, or in conversation, that we all have with one another, to go deeper and to show you how to apply conscious thinking, conscious feeling, and conscious willing. Yeah, so let's talk about the obvious real quick here in the middle or toward the end of October 23. Yeah, we're all dealing with massive bombardment from within and through the collective sort of human emotion, I want to say, triggered by multiple things going on at the same time. Which of the topics do you think, judging by the media, is the one that is sort of pushed the most right now? Which topic do you feel most bombarded by through the media? And how does it make you feel?
I think it's the obvious of the war, obviously, the Palestine-Israeli conflict. That's the biggest one at the moment.
Okay. I mean, there has been war. I mean, we have been dealing with the Ukraine war, and there's lots of other wars going on. So what is your guys' guess, or Jared, maybe you want to comment on why this all of the sudden hijacked pretty much all news? I mean, the Ukraine war is still going on.
Yeah, but we never saw, a lot of that. But as soon as the Israeli-Palestine, I don't think it's a war really, but it's
The
like we
terror
saw.
effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it was instant. There were video images of, all sorts of stuff. It was just instant. Now, obviously, there's an ulterior motive behind it all. So
Behind the bombardment of the pictures and videos, is that what you mean?
yeah, there's an ulterior motive behind that.
Did it feel like that for you?
I think it was pretty obvious. Like, I mean, whenever it's reported in the mainstream, with such ferocity and such, vitriol and with the graphic information that was coming out, such successions, quick fire succession of all these images and division and having to choose a side, and it was instant.
Vitriol. Yeah. So, yeah, it's a very good description actually of what is going on there in our media here. It's very intense. Okay. Now, in the forecast I mentioned, before all this happened, that there's going to be that kind of energy, and that we have to keep in mind that there's a lot of people that is not really able to process all of that. So I also mentioned that it's important to keep ourselves up to date, just so that we know, what the majority of people around us is processing, and also to understand them. Now, obviously, we first have to kind of understand ourselves. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. Considering that there is this war on our concentration going on, yeah, a war on our concentration. Yeah, I called this last year and predicted for this year that we are going to experience something like media wars. Obviously, last year in November, it wasn't really so clear. Now it's more clear, yeah, what this means. Yeah, there is a war out there that is taking place in the media. And I said, keep yourself up to date. And I still stand for this. I just want to remind everybody to not look at the pictures or the videos. Yeah, 90% of those are manipulated, or simply false in many cases, yeah, and have a certain purpose. So let's talk about this ulterior motive, Jared, that you talked about. Yeah, so the separation, the polarization, the needing to pick a side. What's the problem with that? Why is that a problem? I mean, war's been around forever, and we've basically been told these things for probably as long as we can remember. Yeah, that we have to pick a side, and that there's the good guys and there's the bad guys. What's the problem right now? What's the problem with what is happening in the world right now?
It's division and separatism. It's complete, splitting.
Okay. Division, separatism. Okay. And
Black and white, right? It's either right or wrong, or it's no middle ground. There's no room for reconciliation or to actually try to work things out.
Other topics that fall into that category that come to your mind? What are some other topics that are highly polarizing people?
Oh, the planet. I haven't watched that video yet, Jona. Thanks for posting it. But about climate change is very polarizing.
Now, here in the United States, also Black Lives Matter, the whole LGBTQ discussion. What else?
Abortions, right to life. I think
the abortion discussion. What else?
Vaccines and just about the pandemic in general. There's a lot of truth starting to come out right now, which I think is why there's so much distraction on the news right now, because it's big.
So that's your personal conspiracy theory, yeah? That all the talk is just to cover up some bigger stuff.
Yes.
Such as, the COVID aftermath, or the vaccine aftermath. Okay.
Yeah.
What else? What other controversial topics are we dealing with right now? Just, to name it. If we want to process this, if we want to, see ways through it, we first have to kind of do an inventory of what is actually bombarding us here. What else? Okay, let me ask you this way. Is there any area of life seen through the collective eye that is not controversial right now? Name one or two.
You can't really.
You can't.
Everything
Yeah. You're absolutely right.
natural has been manipulated into something bad, and it's confusing most people. But half of the stuff's not bad. It's just what is.
No, but seriously, right? I agree with you, Sean. But let's just free ourselves from all the vitriol. Okay? Let's find one area or two that are maybe connecting, that help us to, sort of find a common ground. Let's do this work here just right now. Where can we all agree? I mean, you guys are from all over the planet, different societies, different tribes, different nationalities, different souls. Where can we find a middle ground here? What can, apart from all the things that separate us, where can we find a middle ground?
I'm also seeing a lot of humanitarian caring in the world. And even with all the troubles that are happening at the moment, there's a lot of humanitarian that aren't even looking at them or us or Palestine or Israel. They're just looking, there's lots of people who are actually just saying, let's just help people, let's just give people water and give them their needs. And so in that, there's a lot of, even here in Australia, it's a multicultural nation, really. And I think they're very aware, what I've seen, they're very aware of not putting one flag up or another. They're sort of saying, well, that will just then affect, hurt somebody else. So there's actually that going on here too, which I find really helpful, because it's not pushing people into thinking you're right and we're wrong, or they're saying that, hang on, we're all humans here. These are human beings, mothers and children and people. So that coming out is sort of making people think, oh, actually, not all people are evil. Not everything that they do is evil. They're just human beings. We're all just human beings. So that is love, right? When we can find love and caring.
Yeah, I mean, the word love is a little tricky for humans, right? Especially in conjunction with media and, how we have been confused, about what love is. But I guess humanitarian, or reminding us on the humanness of it all, right? Sorry. Yes, I'm coming down with something as well. That's quite, connecting, the human connection. I don't think we can call it love just yet. Yeah, but definitely the desire to connect more. What is the problem, do you think, in regard to the polarization and, the separation that occurs through that? So, what this means is like having to take a side, having to take sort of, dividing the world into these two categories, like the good and the bad guys, right? That's really what's behind that. So what about the good and bad guys? Is it obvious right now who the good and who the bad guys are?
No, it's not, because when people are talking about that they have to use force and war and destruction and killing, then who really is good when they're making that choice? Like, who is making the choices towards more destruction to gain peace? Like, what? That, like, are they actually serious?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories on that. Do you know what I mean? This has been a subject of of research in all disciplines, throughout the centuries and millennia, the art of war just came to mind, but really, I think we all are conscious enough to know that, when it comes to war, we're not just dealing with, good guys and bad guys. We're dealing with economic aspects, with resources. We're dealing with a lot of different things, and that's why it's so difficult right now, because these things are not fully disclosed. Yeah. So let's dive a little into this, into the disclosure of that. What we think is behind all of this. Yeah, behind the eruptions, say, of hatred and separation, lies, deception, well, and disinformation. Although the word disinformation obviously has been hijacked already, so we can't really use this anymore. But untruth. So, what, in your opinion, is behind this war talk, this polarization? What force is working through us when we are getting pulled into this place where we cannot find a common denominator, where we cannot find a middle ground?
Oh, it would be the aromatic. It's the survival, the physical. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so I meant this more in the sense of, the perhaps the energy behind it. Obviously, we can name it, and quite frankly, in times like this, it's also important to be able to discern, to understand the nature of darkness, and to name it. Yeah, because in the naming, you're also gaining a little more power over it. But let's just lead ourselves toward, the understanding of what is going on when we are confronted, with this vitriol, okay, inside of ourselves. What is responsible for all this release? Yeah, what is it that is disclosing itself right now? Yes, Cindy, you're picking up on something here, shadow clearing. Let's go a little bit into this. What do you mean with the word shadow clearing?
It's all of the things that keep us in coping, which is what we have to do when we're completely overwhelmed and bombarded by all of this stuff. I'm coping on some level.
Okay, yeah. So
But it's
coping
also, yeah.
is a bit of a psychological word. Okay, so give us an example. What coping could look like for different people, or maybe just use yourself as an example.
Sometimes when I am overwhelmed, overtired, and I just need to go into coping, is sitting in front of Netflix, getting a good fantasy show on, Lord of the Rings or something, just fantasy, getting out of reality, and maybe a bucket of popcorn to go with it. Anything to
is there anything wrong with
soothe
that?
myself.
Well, I mean, it's better than
if I do it
some.
If I do it consciously, it's okay. And knowing what I'm doing is okay. It's when I'm unconscious about it, and just it's like my go-to automaton.
Okay, so let's just discern here. So when you do something to make yourself feel better, yeah, consciously, let's say, and let's be very practical here. Let's say you get caught in, some sort of overwhelm. Let's say you had a day where you had to deal with a lot of erratic emotions from other people, or where you just got overwhelmed by the news that you were watching or something like that. Or something that somebody else said to you directly or indirectly. So anything that triggers big emotions in us, okay, and we realize that it overwhelms us. That is obviously not a good place to be in when it comes to like making good decisions. We already know that. Yeah.
Yes.
And this is what you mean with coping, because, if we feel overwhelmed, then our system, goes into all kinds of patterns, preformed paths, okay, to deal with it. For most of us, this is something like, fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And
Nervous system.
and that's what you mean with the coping. So we go into a place where, we use some pre-existing patterns, that we've learned at some point in our lives to get ourselves through, right? So escaping into fantasy, or reading a good book. Can we come up with other coping mechanisms than just the kind that Cindy just mentioned? Just soothing herself. What else do you guys know a lot of people use as for self-soothing or coping?
Exercise.
Exercise. And stay
Overeating.
neutral. Eating. Gardening.
Drugs and alcohol.
Yes, drugs and alcohol. It's a big one.
Arguing.
I was going to say, like, prepping. My son was watching a show about the prepping preppers. It was very out of this world.
Hoarding, right? Like getting
Yeah.
the bags of rice and getting sort of petrol, gas, stored up and stuff like that. Okay, so there's obviously, something that we need to counteract. Okay, so Cindy, in your case, when you watch fantasy movies, and by the way, I indulge in the exact same soothing mechanisms. What does that help you?
It pulls me out of the charge there for a little while. And
is that a bad thing? I mean, guys, don't be sort of hypercritical with yourself. It's not a bad thing. Pulling yourself out of,
call a friend, go for a walk, something that's good for me. But I first have to like remove myself from whatever toxic environment. Yes.
So at that point, we're not, I mean, it is a form of coping, but, it really is just a way to soothe ourselves for a moment. And ideally, when it's done consciously, as you say, it can help us to shift our energy so that we can feel a little lighter. What can be the problem with any of these things that we use to cope with overwhelm? When is it a problem?
When we stay in it too long, then it becomes the new comfort zone again. The new reality.
Yeah, it's very smart, Sean, that you said the new comfort zone, because if we stay in certain habits, if we cope in the same way over and over again, it produces a form of familiarity, a form of okay, here I can settle. And if we stay there too long, all right, then we forget that it was just supposed to be a temporary thing. Yeah, it was just supposed to help us out, shift our energy. Now, if we do this, let's say, I think in the one of the workshops lately, I said chronologically, if we do this, not chronologically, chronically, if we do this, like say, over a lifetime, over decades, what do you guys think happens there with, all the, the overwhelm? Yeah, so the overwhelm is something that comes from intense emotions or thoughts, or usually thoughts about intense emotions. What happens with those emotions? What happens with, all that energy that is there, but we're just basically pretending it's not there? What do you think happens with that?
I think from personal experience, it gets more and more explosive and more triggering because I haven't dealt with the underlying triggers. So anything else above that trigger is going to just trigger the whole lot.
Mm-hmm. So it can become explosive. That can be very well observed with anger, for example, right? And we just sort of suck it
It's
in,
kind of
suck it in.
it's kind of like my self-awareness just has not developed enough to reach this maturing level to make better choices.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's like. And I still get caught up in it, guys, sometimes. It's just I'm catching myself out quicker each time. Well, it's just I don't allow myself to indulge it as much, but it's still there. It's not going to ever stop.
No, it's something that feels good. Yeah, but it's only something that feels good. Yeah, it's not something that helps us to process something, or that allows us to come to deeper insights or make better choices. It just feels good, like a piece of chocolate cake. I mean,
Yes.
it is. It is that for me. The bag of chips and the
For
piece of chocolate.
donut.
Yeah, it doesn't lead to anything. It just makes me feel good for 5 minutes. Yeah, so there's a discipline needed with our self-soothing, because if we do it for too long, and especially if we do it chronically, not only does this create hardwired unconscious patterns in us, but it also, prevents us from actually processing what is going on. Yeah, because from a psychological point of view, our ego that is responsible for the, suggesting all these coping activities, yeah, is not really designed to process anything. It's just supposed to be there to, or it's supposed to prevent you from overload of any sort. Okay, so it's not really supposed to come up with solving strategies. It's really just more there to prevent you from psychically, toppling over. Yeah, from experiencing some kind of psychotic episode or something like this. So it's very important that we understand that that it is a function that we need. But if we stay there and if we don't make it conscious, all right, then it basically does something that we then sort of call, all this sort of, well, it produces a shadow aspect of us. Yeah, we're basically burying, these things in the darkest corner of our basement. Okay, and more and more sort of building walls around it, to the point where, and this is what the ego hopes, that we can deny its existence. Yeah, we can pretend it's not there, and that's the problem. Yeah, so the shadow is a term that comes from Carl Jung, and it's psychology, transpersonal psychology. Basically the repository of all our unwanted, unloved, and unprocessed things about ourselves. Okay, so when you go a step deeper now, let's say, Cindy, since you mentioned, you were the first one to share that, how you would cope with things. What is it that you're not trying to feel or look at when you do this. In your case, watching fantasy movies and eating a bag of popcorn. What do you not want to deal with?
Either the big emotion that's attached to it or confronting whatever needs to be done that I'm avoiding.
Okay.
If I have to have a conversation.
Very nice. Yeah. So there's the resolution part. Yeah. Obviously,
yes.
If there is a conflict somewhere, yeah, in us, an emotional conflict, then that means there's some kind of action step that is needed. Okay. And for some people, the action step can be something scary. Yeah. You call it confrontation, right? That there's some kind of, now I got to do something. I got to actually look at it. This is a form of confrontation. And the other part is, just simply not wanting to feel a certain feeling or a certain emotion. Do you guys have any idea why it is that we want to avoid feeling certain feelings or emotions sometimes? Do you guys know what this is tied to?
I think it's tied to shame and society that doesn't allow us that, and then we feel we're not entitled to that and that we're bad. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, that can sometimes be the case, but you would have to have a reference feeling for it at first. So avoiding a certain feeling or a certain emotion always means that there's a memory in you. Yeah, there's a memory in you of having had that feeling and not wanting to go there, not wanting to experience it.
Yeah, I think it's tied to, like you said, Jona, it's tied to the memory. And a lot of that is just the pain of the past. It's the trauma that we've experienced before, and the pain of having to re-experience it, and the potential of the fear of re-traumatizing ourselves by going through it.
You're very hard to understand. I don't know if it's the same for others as well. Something with your headset, I think. But I think I got the gist. So there's this fear of...
Sorry, Jona. Yeah, I'm just in the car now. So, yeah, I think it sounds like you got it, though.
Yeah. So the fear of re-traumatizing ourselves. So there's some kind of memory tied to it, some kind of, something that actually happened to us. And somewhere along those lines is a trigger warning in us. And it says, if you deal with this, you are, perhaps, so it's a threat, experiencing the same thing again. Now, who of us here has actually experienced war? Actual war. Actual, that kind of destruction that you are seeing there. Do we have anybody here who has actually experienced that? Okay. Now, if you're watching this and you are, in the armed forces, or, you are, a refugee from a country where there's active war going on, and please be advised that, when you have an actual experience of that what we are about to talk about does not apply to you. Okay. All right. So this is one thing we all have in common here, at least in the live audience. We've never experienced actual war. Okay. So it's apparently not the memory of anything. Right? So it's not the memory of something. So if it's not the memory of war, then it's got to be the other. But there's a certain overwhelm, there's a certain feeling that we don't want to feel. And that needs to be investigated. Because for us to actually process that and to come up with resolutions, we need to know what it is that we don't want to feel. This is what forms our shadow. Yeah, so Sean, you mentioned earlier a specific kind of emotion, in your case, shame. Okay. And that's important to understand about yourself, because when it comes to shame, there's always an identity issue with it. There's always something that points at your sense of self, who you are. Yeah. So what would you say, if it's okay for you to share this here? Yeah, when it comes to this feeling, this emotion that you don't want to feel. Yeah. What is that? What kind of, say, fear is arising in you when, you look at those kind of overwhelming pictures on news, or, even if you just feel the energies of that as energetically sensitive, that's like reading the news as well.
I think from my inner and external world, that scrutinizing, and I if I tune into it, I can see how people are scrutinized, and I can see how I've been scrutinized, and it's like, oh, not this again. This has been my whole life.
That's the
And
memory, right?
that's the memory. But I go and I challenge myself, and I will speak to various people, and the common denominator is that we're still all human. So I come back to that, and that really centers me. But if I feel separated in, like, even in the slightest way, it doesn't set me off anymore, because I know by setting myself up, it sets up my nervous system, but it still makes me question people a lot. I still feel like, I want to know where that scrutinizing is wanting to take me. And that actually empowers me sometimes. But sometimes it's like, well, you're not going to get anywhere with that person. Just leave it. So I don't know. In a way, it's a good thing to have, but in another way, it's very intrusive. It's very intrusive, because then it's like my judgments get very pulled very much so anywhere, and that's the danger for me.
Okay, so there were the aspects of scrutinizing, and the aspects of well, we got there through shame. So when we feel, you also mentioned separation, so that there was a mix of different things. So when you feel separated, that is what brings up this emotion that you don't want to feel.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned the memory of that as well. So we have to separate this a little bit. So when you feel overwhelmed, okay, then you feel like that there's some kind of separation going on. Okay.
Yep.
So what is your coping mechanism?
At the moment, it's sleep.
Okay. Well, when we're a little sick, and we've talked about this here before, the recording, sleep is maybe not a bad idea. But in general, like you mentioned this, what you said, sometimes it empowers you and you go out and connect with people. So your coping mechanism is forward, is like going to with people and actually trying to include yourself.
Yeah. Yes and no, because just including myself in anything was dangerous. I have to feel myself first, and then I can do it. If I can feel like Sean,
Okay.
then I can go out there
Okay.
and I can feel I can just do it, and I'm fine.
Okay.
Even if there's a bit of scratches on me or a bit of a bruise, I can tend to that later. But there's this force in me that just says, nah, just get up, get on with it, and that's it. And it's worked really well. I just
So it's about identity. Okay, so you just said it. You need to feel like Sean.
Yeah,
You need to feel like yourself first, and then you can connect with people, and then it works well.
100%. It's
Okay.
just happening right now. It's just happening right this second.
So this is the
Weird.
solution. Okay, the
It's
solution
so
is
weird.
authenticity. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, there
So
you
okay.
thanks.
Here's a common ground. Here you just did something, Sean, with yourself. I didn't do this, so you know, you harmonized something inside of you right now. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So there's a form of self-healing, yeah, by just expressing it. And sometimes what the person says doesn't actually make a lot of sense. So it was kind of hard for me to figure out what you were saying. Okay. But it wasn't really important. I just repeated what you said. And that allowed you to harmonize. Really, most of it has to do with honesty. You know, authenticity and honesty are linked. But the whole point of talking about this is to understand that, you know, whatever it is that we think we should do in order to cope is often quite the opposite of what we should do. Yeah, and the reason why Carl Jung called it a shadow, which I think is a really good description, because that's actually what it looks like if you look at it etherically, you know, is because it is almost like sort of a double. Yeah, it's a double, but it is, you know, the scrutinized, shamed, yeah, and separated part in your case, John. Okay. So our shadow is actually the traumatized, beaten up, terribly hurt part of us. And yet, you know, we are the ones that we, as in like, you know, who we think we are, you know, that are doing this to ourselves. This could also be related to collective events, okay? But let's get a few more examples if you guys have the patience, okay, to get a better feel for what a shadow aspect is, so that we can then, you know, consciously work with it and through it, yeah, and perhaps even use it as a guide as to what it is that we need to overcome on a personal level. Let's start the thought process again with, what is the feeling that we're trying to avoid when we feel overwhelmed, when we feel challenged, yeah, in through outer energies or inner processes, okay, and we feel the pull into coping. What is it that we don't want to feel? What's underneath it? So for Sean, it was shame and separation and also scrutiny. Is it the same for all of you guys? Is shame and separation sort of the biggest fears that you guys have?
Of being found out that I don't have it all together, that I am actually human. And there's a part in me, that shadow part, that doesn't want to allow that without a filter, which is the ego. It goes through my ego to be in that vulnerable place.
Being found out that you were
That I'm human. Yeah.
that you're
That I'm
weaker than
human.
you appear, that you're weaker than you appear,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that you don't
Exactly.
have it together, or that you don't know everything, or things like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now go with that. What would happen if you were found out?
Probably take a lot more of the pressure off of myself.
No, but go there, like, because we really want to know what the emotion is. So it's a
it's fear.
Yeah, but what is the actual feeling that you're afraid of? What would happen if you were found out? Shame, scrutiny,
Yeah.
and separation?
Yeah, same. Yep.
All right. Identity, sense of self. Okay. Anybody else? What are we so afraid of dealing with?
What's the word for abandonment, Jona? I can't think of it right now. There's like a feeling of like kicked out of the tribe, that you just don't belong anywhere. There's that real feeling of
isolation. I mean,
yeah,
being a leper. Extreme. It's an extreme one, but still.
Yeah, disconnected. It's separation. It really is.
It feels like you're totally abandoned. Abandonment, and you don't want to go into that trauma, because you'll feel that is what, well, that's for me. I would feel that when I don't want to face something, it's like, a real deep pain of being abandoned. And I think when Cindy was talking about being found out, for me, more felt like being found out that I am really dark, I'm really bad.
I'm sure Cindy is referring to that as well. Anybody else? Anybody here afraid of being, found out that you're dark, actually, deep down? Well, if you're not pushing the heart button like Sean right now, like this, okay, you have some shadow work to do. Okay, yeah. Let me laugh about this here for a moment. And I don't mean to make fun of you, but this is something that we all share, guys.
Yeah, it's like a core belief, right? And when I get down to to my core, I'm bad.
Darkness, and we never, nobody ever does the work to define darkness. Okay, but if you think about it, like, what kind of darkness? Okay, could there be hidden in you, Julian? Okay. That you're an evil person? That you're a serial killer?
Yeah.
If you're a serial killer, that fear is actually valid. Okay.
Yeah, it could have been in a past life. I don't know. But
no, but you know what I mean. It's like,
it's deep
think about
feeling.
what you're so afraid of. Like it's nothing really. It's for all of us. Of course, we all have a certain spiritual doubt in us, that we're not really that good person that we would like to be. That we're simply not this ideal that we are projecting. And that's the problem. That's the problem with all shadow. Yeah. This is the reason why I think the word shadow is such a great word, because it is the part that does not match up with what we're projecting on the outside. That is what we're trying to bury. And we all do it. Yeah. And it's very similar for all of us. There's individual aspects to that, but if you look at the bigger perspective or the deeper perspective of it, it's the same. It has to do with our sense of self.
Yeah, and it comes to accepting that I have my darkness. I know that I know that I can go there quite easily.
I'm a chips lover and a fantasy movie lover. I admit to it. Okay. Yeah.
I can live.
And that relieves me of my shadow. I still have to do something about it, but that's the power of recovery and so forth, when you notice that you're doing something in order to prevent something else to come forward. Okay,
and
then.
Oh, sorry, Jona. If I have any shame or anything that's coming up like that I feel, which did come up the other night, I had a dream and then I went into like, oh, what's this feeling? And it was like a shame and more so a guilt. And I was like, oh my God, that did happen such a long time ago. And then I went into just feeling it out. And then it's more like a recapitulation of going back into that moment in time. My dream came forward to remind me. And I actually healed it within myself. I'm thinking, wow, that must be so deep, that memory, that it was coming forward. I thought I'd healed it, but I obviously hadn't. And I felt into it, and I just forgave myself for then. But also feeling, a thought came to me, how many times do I want to keep remembering that pain? How many times do I want to keep energizing it? And I was really grateful to actually just be able to allow it to come forward and then just let that guilt.
Becoming aware of it is really a big step. Okay. I want to make the arc now to when this occurs collectively. Okay. So there's an issue with our sense of self, and that seen from an esoteric point of view has to do with our I awareness, our I consciousness. Yeah, there's something about that. Yeah, we're not congruent. We're not agreeing with everything, and this disagreement or this confliction, as I sometimes call this, has to do with things not matching up, either us not matching up to, our own ideal, or, how we sort of fantasize ourselves to be, yeah, or with how other people see us. And the reason why I'm boiling this down to that, because obviously there's guilt, for example, it has a slightly different connotation, and so does fear and victimhood and so forth. So if you look at the map of consciousness, Hawkins's map of consciousness, it's very well, sort of shown, these different frequency layers or levels of these individual kind of emotions that we're so afraid of. But the point that I want to make here is that it has to do with how we feel about ourselves. And how we feel about ourselves depends on how conscious we are about ourselves. Okay, so the less conscious we are about who we are, yeah, and what we're doing, the more projections we need. Why? Because we have this underlying fear of getting kicked out of the tribe. Why is that? It's easy to explain, because as humans, per design, biological design, we have the instinct to connect with others, to commune with others, because we are simply, as a species, not capable of surviving on our own. Obviously, with nowadays technology and so forth, and with enough will, we can all survive on our own. That has been a spiritual practice for many thousands of years, to prove that to yourself. But, it's so theoretically, as a species, we are not designed to be alone. We need community. Yeah. So there's a deep programmed fear in us that we're not belonging. And through our own childhood and psychology, we experience various levels of trauma there, yeah, be it through abandonment, be it through negligence, be it through, actual neglect, yeah, and so forth. Obviously, all the stuff that we carry in us as what we call inner child aspects, that they're tightly linked to our shadow. So our shadow is, basically, the our true self in the basement. Okay, yeah, it's who we truly are that does not match up with how we want to be seen or how we think we have to be. So collectively, yeah, when that comes up, and I wrote an article here at the beginning of the month, so if you go to my website, you can see this in the blog section called Global Shadow. I've written many articles about the Global Shadow, but here in specifics, in conjunction with the events of October. Again, mind you, this is a forecast, so this writing, this article comes from the forecast. For those who are in the energetic tune-up, they become the whole writing for the month already. And here I'm referring to the specifics of these times, the energetic specifics of these times here. With the eclipses, those are always times of openings, and the etheric things are becoming more visible, and it inadvertently leads to, not just us seeing, these shadow aspects in other people, which can be in and of itself already enough distraction or overwhelm, but also actually beginning to see it within ourselves. So I don't want to actually talk about shadow work per se and what it can do and how it can be applied in a psychological or energetic or spiritual way. What I would like to discuss with you guys is how this, or how you see this very same mechanism that we just, talked about, how this might be playing out on the collective level. When we are faced with these kind of wars, these kind of, hidden agendas, and these convoluted ties, and one side, whether it's politics or finances or climate change or all the technology and so forth. You have these factions that are accusing one another of some kind of either something hidden, or undisclosed, or something that is not matching up with the picture. Let's have a look at some of those collectives or societies that we are in. I think it was you, Julianne, or Jared, I'm not sure, who were mentioning, Jared, it was you, who, when you talked about Australia, no, that was you, Julianne, sorry if I mixed this up, guys, about the notion, the sort of collective tendency that you're picking up on in Australia. You said something along those lines with the humanness and humanitarian work and people remembering to just be there for one another. And then you even mentioned Aborigines. Is that something that you think is fully resolved in your society? Is that something that you see every day, that where you see people coming together and really trying to make it work together? Or is this maybe just a projection, or an ideal? Or is this actually something deeply dark that is hidden in your particular society?
Yeah, I think
I mean, those of you from Australia, you all call.
It's a mix, because there's only, I was more putting out to, there's a small collective of people who have got humanitarian and, like war is destructive and terrible and it takes away human life, and can't we just evolve to a higher level of consciousness where we don't have to kill, but we can't. That's not where we're at right now. But there is a small collective, and that voice is out there. It's here. And then, of course, we've got every other. It's all a big hodgepodge of all different people, like with real hatred and real unresolvable anger towards other people or other races. So I'd say there's like small factions of each in our society. And I suppose if people say that they want it all to be kumbaya, that's also a darkness, because in the big picture, yeah, I wish everyone would get it together, but that's a part of me that is going against the divine.
That's wishful thinking, like
thinking. Yeah, there's like a part of me that, of course, would like everyone to just stop fighting and stop bombing the planet, and because
But what's in the way? What are those shadow aspects? I mean, you mentioned a few of them right now.
Yeah,
what would need to be processed? What would need to be healed in order for that to become possible?
The inner hatred and anger that people feel, even within myself, like actually facing our shadow and sitting with it and actually feeling into it and healing it. And we're at all different levels, and there has to be respect for people who are really stuck in shadow. I mean, even as
guys, don't make the mistake to mix shadow and darkness.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
here in this last statement, I think you were referring to darkness.
Darkness, yeah.
Shadow has something to do with the identity. Okay, and this is very important to understand, because when it comes to shadow clearing, yeah, and when we talk about global shadow, as in, you know, the clearing that we all have to go through as humans, okay, as a whole species, perhaps with the subcategories of our nations or our continents, or, you know, whatever the identity is that we are attributing ourselves to. So you are an Australian, okay, so part of your identity is attached to the Australian identity, and with it also the Australian shadow. What do you think it is that is part of your shadow that you need to work through, that you see reflected in your society? Maybe that wasn't asked in the right way, but really, I want you guys to make the connection between your own identity issues, your own sense of self, issues, and that of your country.
Yeah, well, my family lineage is Estonian, and my grandparents and my great-grandmother and my mother's parents were refugees. I suppose that is an abandonment, and then a lot of the people that are in Australia are refugees or were convicts, and I suppose that sense of belonging.
So there's a sort of a collective abandonment, a collective outcasting that you sense in your society. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so there's that collective, like not belonging, not fitting in, and then yeah, I would say again, the shame, there's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
I know my grandparents suffered with a lot of shame and guilt.
So if you look at your own shadow as part of that sort of, let's just call it national shadow, okay, and you understand that, you know, your national shadow is basically the culmination of all the people that it contains, right? So everybody who identifies themselves as Australian, yeah, carries or contributes to that. What do you think needs to be addressed in order to heal that shadow aspect, to liberate? It's actually more like a liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we do shadow clearing, shadow work.
It's a sense of belonging and community and feeling
Feeling worthy, maybe? Worthy?
Yeah. Worthy's a good one.
Yeah, to feel the right to exist.
Yeah. Exactly. And that, yeah, that sense of self-worth. Yeah.
Okay. Now, we got quite a few Australians here today. Those of you who are also from Australia, how do you feel about the Australian shadow?
Jona, I'm sorry, I've been in and out, but for me, there is quite a very dark element to the Australian shadow, because it only was, I think, in the 1970s, and I was born by then. I was born in 70, so where we had the White Australia policy. So it's deeply embedded in the Australian shadow.
Is that like an anti-apartheid kind of law, or?
No, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically they were trying to make Australia white, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's how my grandparents came here, because they were Estonian, so they wanted blonde-haired, blue-eyed, green-eyed people, rather than a lot of what they were. The White Australia policy was we were having lots of like Asian influence and lots of people from Asiatic countries, because
and
we're so
Aborigines, of course.
close, I suppose.
Yeah.
And
so that was an actual policy that preferred white people.
I don't think it was the
people.
Aboriginal people, because the Aboriginal people are the first people here, but it was more so the high influx of people moving to this country back then. So they wanted, more of
to influence the genetics of Australians, basically.
They wanted European influence. Mm-hmm.
It actually came out of the Aboriginal genocide, because they were trying to breed out Aborigines after colonisation, and after a lot of the Aborigines were killed, they were trying to breed them out and make them white. And that's where the White Australia policy came out of, I believe. I wouldn't quote me on that, but that's where I believe it came out of. So it's deeply ingrained. And then there's the lost generations of children that they call the lost generations, where the state, which I worked for 12 years, was removing children from Aboriginal families and placing them with white families. And this goes way back, 150 years. So racism is deeply ingrained in the Australian psyche, and a part of the collective shadow of the Australian psyche.
Okay.
I'm so glad that, Jared, you said that, because that's been my argument with people for the last few months, that this country can be so racialistic. And it's almost like a relief for me, guys, that this has come out, because I felt like this for 31 years, and it's a relief for me, and I can go and I can talk to people about it in a very organic way, and I just listen. And you know what? They're so grateful that I just listen. I'm like, we're all affected, but it's just, there's something beautiful in it for me, because I've been waiting for this, because it's been like everything under the carpet for so long, but yet I've been feeling different. And now that it's out, I actually feel a part of something bigger than myself. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm just glad that people can say this. And
So how can you guys from Australia here, how can you harmonize that within yourself? So that this part in you, that is tied to your collective shadow, can heal. One, of course, is expressing, freely expressing.
I think it's just owning it just by identifying it and and observing it and witnessing it is, begins the healing process. And it's interesting for me anyway, personally, and I know Julianne's from Estonia, and Sean's Jewish, and for myself, like my wife is Indian, my daughter's half Indian, so we're all blend of different cultures. So for us, it's obvious that
You've
my
already
wife,
harmonized that, yes, or you had.
she gets racially, she feels the racial tension here a lot more than she did in Canada where we lived before this. So it's not a part necessarily a big part of the Canadian shadow, but it's felt here. It's a different dynamic completely.
How does this help you with your sense of self? Talking about this and just having this kind of discussion and owning up to it, like you just said.
For me, Jona, I don't. I wouldn't say that I'm kind of owning up to it. Like now, it's not new. This is not new to me. So I've always known that Australia was deeply racist. I mean, I grew up in that age where my parents, were calling Aboriginals all sorts of names, and then I've had direct experience. I've worked in Aboriginal communities, and actually I've been worked for the the Queensland government at the time, and had removed Aboriginal children from their homes. So I've got direct experience with it. So it's not new to me in terms of my identity.
Maybe the aspect for you is more the complicity.
I think, maybe. I think for me, it's more the refusal to acknowledge it. Like there's a big refusal in the community, and it's not for me to assist anybody else in acknowledging their shadow. But I mean, Australia is deeply racist. What am I going to do about it? Do you know what I mean? So I just accept my part in terms of me, being a part of a multicultural family myself. It just I'm not quite sure, to be honest. It's not really part of my identity. It never has been. I mean, I acknowledge there's an element to carrying the global shadow, the tribal shadow, but I've never really identified with it. It just didn't fit well with me. It never did.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make here is a connection with obviously what we are born into, and the conflict with what we identify with. I like what you just said, because obviously you have an interracial family, therefore on some level you must have overcome that already. You've vibrated it, you're embodying it, but you're deeply critical about the system and how it handles, for example, the children being removed from their family of origin and so forth, and this is or was used to be part of your job. So I want you to understand that the way this this collective phantom pain, as I call it here, how this works, can sometimes be very subtle. Okay.
Yeah, and I can actually, now that you mention it, so I'm feeling it now. Just as
Yeah.
you said, just before you mentioned it, it hit me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually deeply disturbing, and yeah, okay, I can see what you're saying now. I need to do something with that.
No, not really, but here's the deal. It is in the making the unconscious conscious that we're already working on our shadow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and just like Sean, how you responded here, like it helps you to just hear this. Okay. So
Oh, huge. Major, major,
by
major, major.
bringing these unconscious things forward, or by revealing the things that are being swept under the carpet, okay, something already happens. It allows us to bring these buried parts forward, okay, and this is how we, can harmonize for ourselves, because we can then say, oh, now I understand myself a little better. Okay, now I understand why I have these triggers, or why I have these coping mechanisms around certain aspects. Maybe in your case about your work. Yeah. Obviously, as far as your family is concerned, you have no problems with racism. Okay. But maybe around your work that have kept aspects of yourself in the basement, that have blocked, certain aspects of yourself to unify with the whole that you are. So it's not necessarily that you have to do anything about it, Jared, for as long as you're aware of it, for as long as you understand that you took a hit to your sense of self, okay? And, for most of us, especially when it comes to our ties to our collective shadows, the tribal shadows, we're kind of innocent there at first because we're born into it. It's karmic.
Yeah, when I say I have to do something with it, I guess what I meant was just to feel into the emotion of it and
Yes.
just
Yeah.
process it that way. That's what I meant. But in terms of yeah, being in the basement, I grew up with that, so it was it never fit, it never sat well with me, but I was definitely exposed to that. So obviously I've taken that on, and it's a part of me. That's the emotional stuff that I probably just need to feel into. But the when you say hide behind the tribal shadow, I think I just heard you say, or the hide behind the tribe. I can't remember what you said, but I do that. I do tend to hide, not hide, but in some cases I do present like a larrikin Australian male, as as a partial mask, or to present where
it's still in you, right? There's still the vibes of that are still in you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I may have out-vibed it on one level. Yes, I've got an Indian wife, and my daughter's half Indian, so we have a multicultural family. But even with them, I still present sometimes this really
There's a
goofy.
certain temptation with that, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's how these shadow aspects, these idealizations. It's an idealization, the projections.
Yes. Yes.
That's how they do.
Projection.
Yeah, they tempt
Yep.
us into, whatever, feeling special or chosen or better than others or whatever. They pull us, and now listen carefully, they pull us into separation. Yeah. We're being pulled out of, the unity into making ourselves special in some ways. Yeah.
Does that pull us out of truth, Fiona?
Excuse me?
That's pulling us out of truth.
Well, and that's absolutely pulling us out of truth. And more so, it forces us, or our subconscious, to bury parts of us. Okay? So the more we project something, this is the bottom line, the more confliction we have, internal conflicts, and the more we need to bury things. And that's
that makes total sense.
So the solution is always that we harmonize by connecting with it. We just really need to connect with it. You know what it is that we're identifying with, and how it separates us. So a big part of spiritual work is actually to unbury that, and to let go of our tribal. Sometimes it's also family oriented, so there's different layers of that. Family. The kind of family that you're from. Let's say if you were born into like a prestigious or rich or a celebrity kind of, something that other people adore, or if you're born to a certain religion, yeah. So Sean, I hate to break it to you, but the Jewish believe, and so does the Muslim believe, or the Islam, actually contains a lot of these components. Yeah, without without going into
Why do you
detail.
think I rebel?
But the chosen one aspect. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I hate
in your
that. Sorry.
in your case, you're carrying the Jewish aspect and the Australian aspect. Okay, and
Yeah.
that's the sort of aspects that we need to put into account when we're suffering from inner separation. Okay, we have to recognize what it actually is that we're dealing with, and this way of thinking then allows us also to come up with solutions. Yeah, so Matthew, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry that you had to leave because you were from South Africa, and I guess that whole racial discussion is your daily bread as well. Linda, you from Canada. Okay, Jared used to live in Canada and said, the racism is much stronger in Australia than it is in Canada. What do you see as Canadian shadow aspect? Could it be that it's a different one?
I think that it's a lot of separation here, sort of boring people. Everybody's so negative.
Okay, negativity. Let's go a step deeper. Where does this negativity come from?
Probably fear of all of these things that are going on, war and inoculation and untruth.
Okay, so there's a fear that is you reflecting on your collective right now, that like Cindy said earlier, that something is revealed, is being revealed, that something is coming forward. And you mentioned different aspects. Okay, Canada is not a war happy type of country, at least not in the perception of other countries. I don't know.
No, we're definitely peacekeepers.
Yeah.
We have no ability to war.
Canada is also not known for being racist.
No, but we have it all, right? We're not known for it, but that means it probably then just goes under the radar.
Okay, the under the radar stuff is the stuff that we're talking about. I mean, obviously there's discussion, in many countries about, the genocide or the racial clearing, that has occurred, especially in regard to the native, the native populations. But apart from that, do you think that that's something that is that defines the Canadian identity?
I don't think so. I do think
I don't think so either.
We're pretty good on that front, and I think we really are trying to address it head on, the things that were done to our native people.
You just said something. We are peacekeepers. Okay, that's an identity.
Yeah.
Okay, right there. You didn't realize it, but that's like you just told us what the Canadian shadow is. Okay.
Yeah.
So Canadians see themselves as peacekeepers.
And I think that there's also, an element of apathy and an element of apathy to the Canadian shadow as well. And maybe
Okay.
that's tied to the peacekeeping thing. I don't know.
So not doing anything, sort of a form
Yeah.
of conformism.
Yeah.
And peacekeeping more as a sort of non-confrontational. So the dark side of non-confrontational.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely.
Compliance.
Yeah. Canadians are so nice. It's almost sickening. Like
Hey,
to an Australian, like
hey.
they're just so nice and so polite and so welcoming, and like it was just when I lived there, I was oh my god, like where am I? It was just complete because people compare Australia to Canada a lot, but they're completely different places with completely different cultures and completely different shadows.
Yeah, so this is interesting. Yeah, so the Canadians have a little bit of a whitewashed image. I mean, obviously we're not criticizing here. We're just, investigating. We're freeing our minds and investigating, sort of the projections that are there. So you said in the beginning that in Canada there's a lot of negativity there and a lot of fear.
Yeah, I think it's mostly fear. And, maybe it's because we do see ourselves as the peacekeepers and the getting along. And so now when we're in fear and we fear the next guy, it's something that we're just really uncomfortable with.
When you talk about the next guy, you're talking about your president?
Oh, no. Ours is a prime minister.
A prime minister. Yeah, you're talking about the next guy in charge. Is that what you mean with guy?
No, just your neighbor.
Okay.
It used to be that we all just sort of got along, and now our neighbor has told us that they don't think the same way as we do, and we're really surprised.
Okay, so there's a separation. Is there like a fear of them like spying on you or something like that?
No, it's not that bad, but just not getting along, where we don't, one person is going to be vaccinated and the other person doesn't, and one person is going to be masked and one isn't. And for now, it just feels so.
That's still a subject in Canada?
Yeah. I think we're just really surprised. We used to think that we all thought the same way.
Mm-hmm. In regards to vaccination, you mean, and the
All
meaning of it?
All things.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere here. So you used to think that you're all thinking in the same way, or that you're all believing in the same things.
Yeah, even politically, we would all vote and we would want our guy to win. But if our guy didn't win, we had no fear about what the other guy was going to do, because they were all going to move fairly much in the same direction.
So now it's no longer like that. Now you're experiencing a separation within the country, a polarization, what we mentioned earlier, and you don't know what to do. Like you as a Canadian.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it really is a change, but because it.
Oops, you unmuted yourself, I think. Muted yourself. You blipped out.
It looks like I can speak.
Yeah, we hear you again.
Yeah, so I don't know that anything actually has changed, but because we're more vocal and more divided, it just feels unsettling. So it might just settle out and it'll be the same, but it feels uncomfortable now.
Okay, so there's the ideal of just agreeing with everything. Everybody agrees with everything. And that is that is shattered now. It's not the case anymore.
Yes. and
Okay.
probably never was.
Well, I mean, you know, we're talking about the projections, you know, like how we identify ourselves. So when it comes to our own internal journey, when we realize that other people have different opinions, what does that force us to do? How does that affect our sense of self? We have to think more about what we believe in, right? We have
Yeah,
to be more
and that
clear
would be,
about that. We have to actually
yeah,
think about what we believe in.
yeah, that would be beautiful. But what seems to be happening is instead of getting into self-reflection and finding truth, we're more getting divisive and negative to each other.
Yep. So instead of, you know, just celebrating the fact that lots of different people have lots of different opinions, okay, it's seen as a negative thing that people are not all having the same opinion. So do you think that part of the Canadian shadow lies in overcoming that?
I would hope so. I was really, I really saw that as a way that we could go when the pandemic came, but I haven't seen it happen yet.
Now, Linda, if you now pull this back into yourself and reflect on what it means to your own sense of self, okay, your own I consciousness.
Yeah, it's very isolating, very sad and fearful.
So you liked it better when you felt that everybody has the same opinion, when everybody was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and not so much, not so much in a whitewashy kind of way, but I, yeah, I liked it more when there wasn't sort of such divisiveness.
Now, reflecting on your own journey, are you divisive within yourself?
Well, yeah, I'm going through a real tough time now, and that's part of it. You know, now that things changing, what stand do did the different people take? And I feel like there is divisiveness, but that's more, you know, that's just personal sadness and loss.
So you feel sad about it. What could
Yeah,
you do to
very sad.
harmonize? What could you do to harmonize that within yourself?
What I'm trying to do is go within and just settle in my heart and try and just be with truth. And but then it's isolating.
Okay. So when you settle, you're trying to settle in truth and that you feel that that is isolating. Does it mean that others are not in truth? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think well,
How can it be isolating
what
when you're in truth?
in truth is not. And if I can stay there, but when I'm yeah, that's a very good point. If I could just practice enough to stay there, then I'm good. I'm just
So,
not good
so
at
you're
that
not
yet.
always in truth with yourself.
I'm very much not. Yeah, I
Oh,
have to work hard at it.
okay. No, work hard, you know. I mean, I don't know if that's really
Yeah, that's not really right.
good way to describe that, but
Yeah,
so really what I hear you say is that there's a lot of things that, you know, your intention is to be in truth, but there's a lot of things that you uncover perhaps within your own life that are not in truth. And now you're
yeah,
suffering from that. Okay. So this from my perspective goes hand in hand with the Canadian shadow. Okay. Now, you know, it's just a mirroring.
yes,
Okay. Yeah. So what's underneath that is really a refusal to accept truth. a refusal to accept truth. Because, see, truth is liberating and connecting. It's the
Yes.
untruth that is separating. It's all the things that we do and say that are not true, that are not authentic, that we don't actually believe in, or that we falsify, or, you know, also including the things that we're in error in. Yeah, so sometimes we're just in error because we have, you know, sort of preformed, unreflected or unconscious opinions.
Yes.
You know, that counts all into the thing of untruth. So all this is not really, you know, a bad thing to uncover, Linda, because really what I just heard you say is that, you know, in order for you to overcome your struggle, you just have to stay more in truth. All right. And
Yes.
the collective that you're surrounded by, you know, right now is in the process of doing that. So the Canadian shadow is coming forward right now in that way. Yeah. And you mentioned in the beginning that there's a lot of things that are being revealed right now. Yeah, truths are coming out. Okay. So then your personal task, in conjunction with the karmic task that you have by being or having been born into the Canadian collective, is, you know, to work with truth, to first accept truth, and then, you know, to be more in truth. Yeah, because then you no longer have to experience that pain. You also no longer have to feel separated because, you know, truth is kind of like an absolute. You know, eventually everybody arrives there.
Jona, that was so beautiful. That's so true, and it's so simple, and it was so not visible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the refusal to accept truth that creates the separation. I mean, we could go on, and it's cool, and I'd love it if you guys comment on this. You know, to investigate the shadow of your own nation and your own tribe, perhaps family as well, is a really cool process and very important for understanding, you know, really what we're dealing with, because most of those tribal shadow aspects, it's hard enough with our own shadow aspect, but what I wanted to show you right now is sort of the so above as below. Yeah, how the micro and the macro mirrors oneself with all aspects, you know, the good and the bad. So when it comes to collective stuff, you know, we're always very fast on pointing fingers and saying, oh yeah, the collective and others, and, you know, but that in and of itself is separating and untrue. Yeah. So it's very important that we see ourselves as part of it. Yeah. And if there are aspects of our collective that we don't like, yeah, then we should reflect on those and see how they are embedded in ourselves. Yeah. And also how we are, perhaps by refusing to accept that about our collective, also refusing aspects about or of ourselves. Yeah, so it's separation is and the lack of connection is always linked to you know, separated, lost, given away, or taken away aspects of ourselves. And when it comes to, you know, the even larger collective, so the collective, the human collective as a whole, all right, then the overall the healing task, if you will, for our collectives is to heal our sense of self, is to heal our consciousness soul. Yeah, this is the overall collective task in order to, you know, move into, you know, higher levels of healing and peace and you know, collaboration. And it always starts with the individual. Yeah, so we all carry these tribal aspects in us as karmic aspects, And therefore, we need to investigate them, how we are standing with this, and if there are aspects of our tribal inheritance, if you will, that we are trying to sweep under the rug. For me personally, guys, this was probably one of the key aspects of my own personal journey, yeah, to let go of these tribal and collective identifications. Many of you here have had a similar experience like I did. You were able to live in different collectives, and that clearly helps to resolve or to just see those aspects better, because if you move out of your collective, it's a lot easier to look back and recognize this. So I grew up in 3 different countries, and I've had a very clear understanding of how these different collectives, these different societies work very early in my life. What I didn't know was that some of these deeply buried things in me, the darkness of my Viking inheritance, so to speak, that is actually creating a lot of my etheric and spiritual overlay. It wasn't until I recognized that and really just owned it, yeah, that I come from a tribe that is that has always been, raiding, raping, and murdering, yeah, and glorified it as such, yeah. So Vikings were really good at this, yeah, because you don't actually see it today. What you see, when I look at Iceland, is an extremely peaceful country, is no military, and is, not invested in any sort of larger political scandals or revelations, and doesn't really participate on the in the global power games, yeah, but still has quite a few things that are blocking the collective from fully feeling worthy, and therefore, if I look at my Icelandic family and friends and people that I like, yeah, then I can see that they constantly have this sort of inferiority complex about who they are as Icelanders, and therefore constantly need to point out how great they are and how pure they are. I mean, it's the racism in Iceland is a very unique one, because Iceland is actually a very isolated population, and it is very pure in that way. Lately, in the last 20 years, this has changed due to immigration, but Iceland is a very pure genetic gene pool, and subject to many or a lot of research in regards to genetically inherited diseases and so forth, because Iceland also has an immaculate documentation of that. So racism has never been an issue in Iceland, and therefore isn't part of my collective experience. Like it like literally doesn't exist in me. Okay, yeah, but other things do, such as coming from such a small country that nobody really knows where it is, and so forth. And if the only thing that people associate with it is, sort of big, bearded guys and blonde, blue-eyed women. Yeah, well, if I identify with that, then there are some perks with that, because if I go to countries like Australia or countries that favor that kind of looks, if you will, yeah, then I of course feel like an advantage. But if I go into countries where I'm 6 foot tall, as many of where the average population size is rather short, you know, people look at me with disgust. Yeah, so there's, you know, all these things that we have to put into consideration when it comes to our own identity, and the need to let go of that, so that we can fully, and this is now basically dissolution, so that we can fully claim ourselves. This isn't just about, you know, coming to terms with, you know, our flaws. This is much bigger than this. This is about understanding that we are fundamentally independent of all these things if we can claim, if we can heal our consciousness soul. And that is the purpose of our personal shadow clearing, and on a larger scale, yeah, so as above, yeah, also the purpose of the collective shadow clearing that is happening right now. And is the uniqueness of this in this situation that we're in here in this day and age is that it's happening in many different societies at the same time. Yeah, so we basically now have the situation seen from an etheric standpoint or point of view, that the shadow selves of our nations are clashing. And, you know, it required us to have this like 2-hour discussion here to even get to the point. But if you now look at wars, the war that is going on between the Hamas and Israel, or you know, the Ukraine and Russia, then please do yourself a favor and have a look at that, as opposed to the PC-ness, you know, the political correctness of things, whichever that might be in your country, or you know, how things are being portrayed in the media, and you know, how basically you know, whoever the underdog is, the more victimized sort of nation, yeah, involved in a war, you know, you know, tries to collect social brownie points. Okay, the conflict between Hamas and Israel is literally a competition in victimhood. Okay, because both argue that their right of, you know, being involved or conducting the war is the victimization of the past. And that, my dear friends, is something that we need to be able to see. And once you begin to see this in yourself, you can see this in others, you can see this in governments, you can see this in corporations, you can see this in nations and religions. And that is where we need to place ourselves with our, you know, sort of conscious sense of self. Because this discernment allows us to identify when things are just fundamentally dark. They're just dark in and of itself. Okay, to compete about who's the bigger victim, yeah, is fundamentally dark. Yeah, to glorify a certain power position, yeah, that is the American shadow, you know, that needs to be processed now. Yeah, to glorify that and to portray yourself as the, you know, well, not really the peacekeeper, but I don't know, the mouthpiece of freedom and democracy by initiating wars is dark, because what's hidden underneath it is, you know, basically the economic motivation, yeah, basically the materialism of capitalism, okay, that drives, you know, the American shadow. Those are all things that are coming out at the same time right now. And when you look at it from that perspective, and there's so much more, I could talk about the collective, the tribal soul and soul task. Yeah, so each tribe, each nation has, an overall karmic task to fulfill, for the development of humankind. I could talk about, how it ties to the land and so forth. Each land has a certain karmic purpose to contribute to consciousness development. And what we need to recognize that we are not that. We are fundamentally free of that for as long as we claim it, as we become aware of it. Then you can liberate yourself, and you do not need to feel guilty or ashamed of that which you karmically carry in you. The same applies to, those past life aspects and so forth that many of you, spent way too much time with. Of course, you can identify yourself with your past lives, but why? You're here now, okay? You are conscious in the now, and that is where your conscious sense of self needs to be claimed, and nowhere else. And when you do this, and you can stand in that truth, yeah, and you can feel that freedom, you can also begin to harmonize with others. Yes, granted, that's maybe a smaller portion of the population that is also standing in truth and that has also, claimed their sense of self, yeah, their conscious soul self. Yeah, so it's limited, the amount of people that you can, congregate and maybe hold hands and sing kumbaya with. Yeah. But every conscious soul self that you meet will feel deeply connected with you. You feel deeply connected with them, and more so, you will feel deeply connected to anybody who is walking on that same path, who has ever walked on that path, and who will walk on that path in the future. And the last component that I want to add to this picture for you here, just to inspire you to think more freely, to feel more freely, yeah, and to choose more freely, is how dark forces operate. Dark forces operate through fear, through specialness, through doubt, and through hatred. Okay? And for as long, and this is very important that you understand this, for as long as you refuse to claim your sense of self, your refusal to say no to hatred, fear, doubt, and deception will be interpreted as a yes. Let me repeat this. Your refusal to say no to hatred, doubt, separation, and deception. Yeah, and mind you, deception also implies or includes your own, not being in truth with yourself, your own shadow. Okay? Your refusal to say no to that will be taken as a yes. And this is why I go on and on about conscious choice and bifurcation and conscious soul self and embodiment and all these kind of things. Because your job right now is to claim your conscious self. You do not have to be perfect. You do not have to be a peacekeeper. You do not have to be an anti-racist. You do not have to be anything other than a conscious self. And say something along those lines of, I am. Because that's what that means. And that sends an extremely powerful message into the spiritual world. Because it means you cannot be claimed by the dark. Understand that. You have claimed your sense of self. If you don't do it, something or somebody else will. That is how these forces work. That's a universal law. So I am claims your conscious self. And Jared, you said something the other day. I am here. It's a wonderful addition to that. Yes, I am. Yes, I'm here. This is what this discussion was about, and it took us a long time to go there. Obviously, Cindy, you're saying you would love a webinar about this. You can only have that kind of discussion with, people that have a certain conscious level. Yeah, so obviously I don't mind having these kind of discussions, but at the end of the day, all right, everything has already been said. Everything has already been learned. You will not be able to claim your sense of self by collecting more knowledge. This is a choice. And the time of bifurcation is the time of making a choice, or else somebody makes that choice for you. We saw that during the pandemic. And what is about to come, all right, is 10 times worse than what happened. Well, not worse, I don't want to scare you, but, it's along the same lines, yeah, but with just different topics. The confrontation with untruth, the confrontation with unfreedom, yeah, restriction of your freedom, digital ID, 15-minute cities and so forth, all coming. Social credit system, all coming. All already there. And the confrontation with unlove. Utter lovelessness, coldness. And your refusal to say no to that will be taken as compliance. Silent complicity, as I called it 3 years ago. So there's it's sort of a sincerity and also a bit of an immediacy to this. And you have to make sure that you do not let yourself get tempted by fear. Even though I just said, what's coming is 10 times worse. Well, that's part of this initiation rite, if you will. How else would you be motivated to doing this if it wasn't for the confrontation with untruth, unfreedom, and unlove? How else would we finally overcome those stupid tribal, karmic, national, global shadow aspects than through this? Well, Linda, you said grieving, bereftness, desolation. We as humans need that experience. And as individuals that already have that consciousness, we need to see how important it is that we do not get tempted into specialness or, deception, lying to ourselves, or, the materialism, like the fear of dying, and all these things that we constantly talk about. Because that is what creates this phantom pain in us. Yeah, phantom pain. It's a pain that's not actually there. Because the truth is you can't be separated from yourself. But yourself can get hijacked. And that's the choice that we all have to make. We have to claim our conscious self. And that is then why, I keep saying all there's left to do is to live a life in truth and love and freedom, really, the three triune, forces, such as, hope, faith, and love. Yeah, the graces. Because those are the ones that give us the power to withstand darkness. And with it, all the pain and struggle that comes with it. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm ready to do a webinar about this, because it's not structured information. This is information that is coming in through conversation with you. And that's why I love this study group, because it is an interactive, information. Yeah, this is also why I want you guys to come up with topics, why I want you guys to ask questions. Because there's a lot of that kind of deeper understanding, that can only come out through conversing, through active exchange between, well, two or more conscious selves. So with that, I would like to thank you, for sharing and for going with this, and actually for, for being interested enough, to stay here all the way to the end, where we actually found the key to how to harmonize all this horror, all this pain, all this suffering, and, the phantom pains and so forth that come from it. Yeah? Through inner unification and claiming ourselves.
Thank you, Jona. That was a much needed conversation.
Well,
Yes, thank you, Jona.
I'm glad that you feel this way, guys. Thank you very much for being here and for allowing this kind of conversation. Have a wonderful rest of your day. I can barely talk. It's 1:30 a.m., so I need to go to bed. Love you guys, and stay conscious.